Welcome to this introduction to Automa. What is Automa? It's free software that lets you automate all interactions with a website by simply connecting blocks together in a fun way. Compared to the competition, Automa is, as I said, free. There is no limit to its use. The learning curve is very steep, so whether you're a beginner or an experienced user, the only basics you need to know are HTML, CSS, and it offers a wider range of possibilities. Not to mention that it also lets you create extensions for Google Chrome. Installing Automa is easy since it's an extension for Google Chrome. Just do a search for Automa. You get either the official site or the Google Chrome library. You can search both. All you have to do is click on this button. You're redirected to the Chrome store, and there we add it directly to Google Chrome. And that's it. Automatically, Automa launches. You're now on the dashboard with the main menu on the left. First of all, you have the workflows, the templates, as we call them, at Automa. By default, you'll have several of these installed for your first tests. I'm used to using the interface in English, but it exists in several languages, including French. Changing the language is very simple. In the main menu on the left, go to Settings and choose the language here. The interface will then be fully translated. If you still want to have access to the extension icon, click on Extensions, pin on Automa. That way, it appears there. Just click on it. The little house is the dashboard. It takes you straight to the various workflows you have. Creating a workflow is very simple. New workflow. We name it test. The famous blocks appear. There's always the trigger block, which triggers the workflow. From there, you have every conceivable block for transcribing every action. On a website, for example, I want to click on a button, so we have a click block. That's how you connect it. Or when you move it, you can click there. That connects the blocks. There are several ways of doing this. Next, let's say you want to enter text in a form. So we have a form block. You can connect it like this. You can move blocks around. Very simply, you can zoom out, zoom in. And then you have to tell Thomas, if I click on an element, on a button, where it is. This is where the basics of HTML and CSS come in handy, because you have to tell him where to click. Same thing with the form, and it's the same principle for all blocks. You have two ways of targeting an element, either in CSS or in XPath. You have two choices. If you're just starting out, the easiest way is to use what's known as the recorder. The recorder will film all your interactions and transcribe them into workflow Thomas. For example, let's do a Google search. I click here, record workflow. We'll call it Google, and there you go. You'll see the little window in the top right-hand corner indicating that we're recording. We're off, Automa training. I click on Google search and I get the results. Great. I stop recording. I come back to Automa. And here's how the recording turned out. In all, 4 blocks have been created. First, there's the new tab block, which lets you access a URL in a browser tab. We went to google.fr. Next, we filled in the form box to enter the query in which I entered Formation Automat. I had to move my mouse and the movement was recorded. Finally, I clicked on the button that launches the Google search. Everything was recorded, and you see this used the famous CSS selectors. This told Automat where to click or enter text. Now we're in for a treat. Check if it works, execute the workflow. And that's it. Automatically, it reproduces everything I showed Automat. As you can see, It's really very simple. You can quickly build a workflow to automate a lot of things because this is a Google search. But you can also create a loop that will execute dozens, hundreds of Google searches based on keywords you enter in a list, in a Google Sheet. In short, there are lots of ways to do it. And as you can see, it's a lot of fun. It's almost like a video game. You don't even need to know how to code, especially in the case of the recorder. But if you like coding, no problem. And sometimes it can even be useful for certain complex operations. You've got the JavaScript block, which lets you enter all the JavaScript code you want, so the possibilities right away go much further. And if you want to use an API, no problem. You can connect any API to your Automa workflows via a block called HTTP request. In this block, you enter all the information required by the API. The headers, the core, what we do with the response, how we process it. And you can retrieve any data from the response. What if I want to retrieve all the titles? How do I do that? Very simple. I return to my workflow. I'm not going to restart my search, so this time I'm going to trigger my trigger block. At another stage, we'll work on the active tab. So here, we're going to come back here, and I'm going to tell it to retrieve the titles. And to do this, I'm using a getText block, which, as its name suggests, retrieves text. So you need to know what text to retrieve for title tags. To do this, when we manually build a workflow to target CSS, we have what we call the element selector. So you see, it allows you to color different zones. And when you're on the area you're interested in, you click and it tells you which CSS to use. So it's just a matter of cutting and pasting. So in this case, what I'm interested in are all the titles. So here, all the titles. You can also use the page's source code to check. I know, for example, that all titles are H3 tags. What I'm going to do, quite simply, is retrieve all the H3 tags on the page. To do this, in the getText, what do I target? I target the H3 tags. There isn't just one, there are multiple H3s, so I check the multiple option, and to check the result, I'm going to assign the whole thing to a variable. I call it title, I save, and we check together. And that's it. So now nothing is visible. It worked. Anyway, so here I go into my logs. Logs allow you to check each step, every block. So here in Google, I have in my variable, title variable, it has retrieved all the H3 tags. So you see, very simply, in just a few seconds, I can retrieve anything I want from the web page, and then as it's in a variable, you're free to save, export, reprocess what you want without code, with JavaScript code. It's up to you to manage the use of this data as you see fit, always with all the blocks available in Automa. In my training course, which is aimed at beginners as well as experienced users, I teach you to master Automa progressively through more than 35 modules and over a dozen ready-to-use templates that I explain step by step, block by block. If you have any ideas for automated projects you'd like to see me create in a future video, don't hesitate to mention them in the comments of this video.